Shane is like an avid biker like me. We spent about 4 or 5 hours from Batong and then all the mountains around that sort of area. It was pretty full on, pretty hot. There's obviously some easy bits some people wouldn't struggle with, but naturally from the easy bits becomes quite technical quite quickly. And add a bit of water to it. So you need a good bike, good tires, and not only that, a good skill level. Yeah, but as soon as the tracks were narrower, my brakes weren't the best on the bike I was on. So going down steep bits, you need to brake a little bit. I was using the engine brake, but it was still, I'm in a rut and it's muddy and my front brake's not really working, and I do need to slow down a little bit in some of the turns. I'm like, wow. So I'm almost using my feet to heel.
Welcome to Fruiting Body Podcast with your host, Brendan. Today we have a legend of a guest returning. It is John Gibbons, the Bodymaster.
Hello.
Qualified osteopath from the UK. Now, if you're watching this episode and you want to learn more about John's life experiences, he was on a previous podcast, and I'll put a link in the description, or at the end of this podcast, you can link to that, or I'll put a link here so you can go watch that whole video about John's life journey and what brought him to Thailand and what he's actually doing traveling the world as an osteopath. But today, this podcast is purely going to be focusing on my foot. We are going to figure out why I've been hobbling around Phuket for the past couple of months, and John's going to give that a diagnosis. So if you have a foot fetish, please keep the comments to a minimal. I'm going to be tossing that foot on the table. Now, it's nice and clean. I'm doing my weekly pedicure, so we're good to go. No, that won't be just the main subject and point of this podcast. I want to focus on John moving to Phuket now. Now he's building and buying a house up in Nyan, and we're going to learn a bit about that process. Why did you decide on Phuket? Why did you decide on Nyan? A little bit of the process on the visa work and what's going on all around that as well. Now, he's also brought in his book and given me the signature that I'm going to turn into an NFT and sell online. We got the Vital Glutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because that all connects to my foot and how my ass is getting fat. So that's vital. We need to fix that. Because I cannot run. That is the issue. So we're going to learn about all that. Again, who are we? Fruiting Body Podcast. That is Fruiting Body Mushrooms. So we're doing lion's mane supplements, a lot of other mushroom supplements. They are not psychoactive. Only for you viewers. Link in the description and in the comments. This stuff is only on Lazada, and we're going to be giving away a 25% discount on that. So I believe our 120 cap is $9.95 bought, only sold in Thailand, only on Lazada and Shopee. We also have a 60 cap bottle that we're selling at $5.95. So go get that voucher. You click, you collect, and you know how the Lazada stuff works. Soon we'll be coming international once our Shopify store opens, because we are working with Ryan from Life in Bamboo. So we're going to be offering that to his international crowd as well. Now, if you're tired of listening to me ramble, we have timestamps below in chapters. So go down to those chapters, go actually directly to the chapter in which we're fixing my foot. And yeah, just focus on that if you want to give that a look. Do not forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I'm on fire, not just from the coffee, but from the nootropics focus. So get this stuff too. It's awesome. John's on it. Hans is on it. We're all on it. It's probably the coffee that's got me all fired up. That is probably our longest intro. So without further ado, let's get this podcast started. John, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
I felt like I actually rehearsed that.
Yes, that was very good. Well done.
Okay, well, thanks for coming back. We're not going to jump right into my foot because I want to leave that there for, let's get that YouTube retention. They won't know when it's coming, but it is. Again, they can go back and watch that kind of life story podcast more about yourself and understanding your career and what's been going on. But let's just recap a little bit. Last time you were on, you're going to do seminars up in Bangkok. Can you give us a recap of that experience? What went on? What was the takeaway? And what did your clients and students learn from that?
Yeah, well, I was going to Chiang Mai as well. And I thought I was going to Chiang Mai because I wanted to ride a motorbike for 5 days. And I thought, shall I go and teach first and then go and spend the time in the mountains, or go in the mountains? But I thought, I'm bound to get injured. I'm bound to fall and crash. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to teach a course, if I'm broken my knee or something. So I thought, well, I'll go to Bangkok first. So we arranged that. And then the lady came about 600 kilometers from the north part of Thailand. I think she took like 10 hours to drive down. And with her husband and 2 of her friends. So 4 of them came, and then there was lots of people then from different places. And I think one guy actually come from Chiang Mai. He was like an ex-motocross rider. So I think I had about 14 students in a hotel in Bangkok. And yeah, it just worked. It was a spinal course. So I put some videos up and some pictures. Yeah.
What can people expect now? You're going to be traveling to India as well. Are these seminars, like the content is similar, or is it more? Are they deciding what you're going to be teaching, or you're deciding? Can you walk us through, like, if we're attending those seminars, what we could expect?
Well, I'm teaching in Delhi in the 20th to the 23rd of June. So most of the time when I go to Asia, so like I'm also teaching in Hong Kong and I'm teaching in Taiwan in July, and a lot of the courses are mainly spinal. So in Taiwan they want me to do like an MET, but it's all governed around what I already teach. Because rather than trying to design a new course where I won't have direct content, then it's easier to, because I've written 8 books. So like for instance, if you attend my Vital Glutes course, you'll get my Vital Glutes book as the course notes. So, and a lot of students like that. So I don't have to, all my PowerPoints are already pre-designed for each of the lectures. I know exactly where I am at what part of the day, because I've probably taught it 1,000 times. Whereas if it's a new course, it means I've got to write new content and then the structure of it. So it'll probably work very well, but it's easier for me to design, to teach a course I already teach. You know what I mean? And I do 13 courses.
What seems to kind of be the most popular one?
The spinal one. Yeah, spinal manipulation and mobilizing. So when I teach in Dubai, it's normally like there's a combination, that one. So that's normally 2 days of spinal mobilization and manipulation, and then we do a second day on advanced spinal. So that includes the cervical spine, as long as everybody's like a physiotherapist or chiropractor or an osteopath, and that's fine to teach the more advanced level. But then sometimes I'll do the soft tissue course, and I'll do like an MET, and then they'll normally get the PDF version. So rather than me bringing 40 books on a plane, which is unrealistic, and to try and buy them, say, in Dubai is not as easy, and it'd be quite expensive. So then they'll just get like the PDF chapters. So they already can QR code it, and then they'll just use their iPads, and it just seems to work very well. So
how are you kind of deciding to where you're going to be teaching and doing these seminars in the world? Like, what percentages are there places for me to go dirt biking versus I actually want to go there?
Well, yeah. Well, exactly. So
it's kind of a 50-50 here.
Yeah, it's like it's like people say to me, what do you enjoy doing the most? And because I've been teaching for a while, and I still get a lot of satisfaction from it because I get a lot of new students. It's not like I teach a university degree where I'm teaching the same student every day, whereas like every day I teach, there'll be a different caliber of student coming from maybe another country. So I quite enjoy that side of things. But potentially, people say, do you not get bored teaching the same thing? And I go, well, not really, because the students ask me slightly different questions. They learn differently. So yes, the content might be the same. And people say to me, John, when I read your book, it's like listening to in a lecture. So I'm almost word for word, because I've done it so often. But then on the other side of my life, I'm probably obsessed with of dirt biking. So, so I'm not sure which one I would prefer. If I had a choice, if I had one thing to do in my life from now on, what would it be? I'd probably drift towards motorbikes.
Yeah, especially a place like Hong Kong and Dubai. I used to live, outside of Hong Kong in Shenzhen, and I lived in Taiwan. I mean, these have to be motorbiking's dream location to go to. It's just mountains upon mountains there.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, because I'm probably not going to be there long. And the same in Taiwan. I taught, I'm not sure, maybe 4 years ago before COVID. And I almost went in, but the day I finished, I almost left straight away. So I didn't really experience, because I was in Taipei, so it's more city-based. So I didn't realize, if there was anything there biking-wise.
There's Taipei. What's interesting, Taipei's a city, which is, it's kind of like Hong Kong style, but 20-30 minutes outside, you're in the mountains.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Taiwan is, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's protected. I know they do a lot of hiking. I'm not so much sure about dirt biking. I'm assuming they have to have it. It's a massive city.
Yeah,
So maybe something to look in there. And Taiwan it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'd even like to go live back there for like maybe 6 months. It's the landscape's awesome.
I'm doing about 8 courses there. 8 days of teaching. So I'm in Taipei for one stint, and then I'm going south somewhere. I'm not sure how to say the name.
Tainan Shinju?
Yeah,
Shinju.
I think potentially.
Shinju is it's the technology hub of the world.
Right.
This is where all of our tech is invented. It's all the R&D.
Yeah.
So when I lived there 10 years ago, 8 years, something like this, whatever. It's actually where now you're seeing the mobile phones, how they're flipping. And
Yes.
that technology that's when I moved there, 2012, they were just starting the R&D there.
Okay.
So that's what that city's all about. But Shinju, it's a very old city. I think it's like 400 years old. Yeah. So you'll get some great food there as well.
Yeah. Well, that's if I'm going there. I'm just
okay.
Because I'm not 100% guaranteed of that one. It's just a name you mentioned, and I thought it sounds like that one.
Just a quick shout out to 5 Star Marine and Sean Stenning. 5 Star Marine, they're a sponsor on this podcast. So they're just helping us with the production and allowing us to make this content on a week-to-week basis to give it back to you guys, telling you these stories about people living not just in Phuket, but in Thailand. If you want to go check them out, it's on Instagram at 5 Star Marine Phuket. And we'll also leave links in the description. A little bit about who they are. They are a VIP private speedboat chartered tour on the island of Phuket. So they're taking you to places like Koh Lipe Bay, Krabi, Phang Nga Bay. You have complete control over your own trip, which most of other services are not offering that. So Hans will probably throw up a QR code. You can scan that as well, or links are in the descriptions. Go check them out. Let them know if we sent you there. It just helps us grow this podcast. So let's get back to the podcast now. Let's talk about the dirt biking here and your recent trip with a friend of mine. I introduced you to Shane, and I think he's starting up a motorbike tour thing. I told him I'm going to bring him on the podcast maybe once it's ready, probably mid-June. For now, I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description. So he's starting kind of these motorbike tours around Phuket. And to be honest, I've been here 6-7 years. This is a big part of the island that is missing. If you want to go on these motorbike tours, like you did last time, you don't know where to go. And there is some in Chao Long, but not much up here. Can you talk a little bit about your experience, working with Shane and going to Patong? What did you guys do? How did that whole setup all come together? What was it like?
Yeah, because I did ask you, because naturally I went to Chiang Mai last time, so it means, I have to buy Bangkok. So, I had to get a plane for 90 minutes. Because when I'm searching for dirt bike in Thailand, I think Chiang Mai tours came up. And it was really good. Nothing particularly technical, but just to be 5 days in the jungle was amazing. But I thought, if I'm going to spend a lot of time in Phuket, there must be something going on here that's related. So then I spoke to you, and you said, well, contact Shane. And then, Shane is like an avid biker like me. So we were just chatting. The first time we chatted, it was probably about an hour just on motorbikes. And then eventually I went to meet him. We had a chat and had a beer somewhere, and that was really nice. And he said, well, what we can do is one of our friends called Carl Jeffrey, he's in Patong, and he doesn't lead, he does lead groups as such, but I don't think he's got a website. He's all more like, if a friend wants to go biking for a day, then you could just tag on with him. So he was on a KTM 253 ride yesterday, and then he lent me one of his KLX 230s. And then Shane brought his Honda CRF, not sure if it was a 300 maybe, or 250, I think it was 300. And so I met him yesterday at his place, and then we loaded up his bike, and then we drove to Patong, and then we met Carl. And then from there, about 11 o'clock, we spent about 4 or 5 hours from Patong, and then all the mountains around that sort of area. And it was pretty full on, pretty hot.
Is it technical, like much more technical than up in Chiang Mai?
Oh, way more. Way more.
So like you were saying to me downstairs, like if you've never been on a motorbike, don't even think about doing this part of this section anyways.
Well, there's probably, it's like Carl was saying yesterday, there's obviously some easy bits some people wouldn't struggle with, but naturally from the easy bits becomes quite technical quite quickly. And add a bit of water to it. You know what I mean? So like, especially in rainy season where everything's muddy, slippery, it's a different ball game altogether. So you need a good bike, good tires, and not only that, a good skill level. And things like that. So so there was, a lot of it was relatively straightforwardish. Yeah, but as soon as the tracks were narrower, my brakes weren't the best on the bike I was on. So going down steep bits where you need to brake a little bit. I was using the engine brake, but it was still, I'm in a rut and it's muddy, and my front brake's not really working, and I do need to slow down a little bit in some of the turns. I'm like, wow. So I'm almost using my feet to heel. Yeah, because it's quite. I remember we went for riverbeds. Ended up by a dam, We stopped at a 7-Eleven. I needed to cool down because I was pretty hot. So we almost like stripped off in 7-Eleven and just had some drinks there. But no, it was great. But I know Shane is going to organise. I think he's trying to do it just off Phuket on the mainland.
Phang Na.
Yeah. So because he said like there's hundreds of acres. Because the problem is like in Patong, if you start there, you're on the road a lot. So naturally to get to the dirt, it's road, then dirt, road, then dirt. And if people have never ridden in Thailand, they might not understand how local people drive, and suddenly they could have an accident quite quickly. Whereas because I come here often, it's easy for me to navigate, if you like, and I can sense what people are going to do because people don't indicate that much and just cut out in front of you. Whereas I think Shane, the idea was that he is going to set up somewhere where it's like, you start on the dirt and you finish on the dirt and there's not much road involved. You might start at local villages, but the traffic-wise, further south in here, it's quite full on. So
yeah, and what's interesting, I'm sure. So that was your first drive in Patong. He hasn't taken you to like this side where you. No. Yeah, because my understanding is you can pretty much even start out by Heron's Monument almost, where the dam is.
Yeah,
and that mountain. People don't realize you can follow that whole mountain all the way down to Chalong, apparently.
Okay.
And it would have went through Patong as well. Now, were you kind of just starting at Patong and going right over the mountain down into the dam? You might have been at the Katu Dam, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Is it the dam with the huge track that goes around it? It's kind of like a walking track.
Yeah, there was a lot of people running and walking around.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, so you probably went right over the mountain down.
It's about 20 minutes because we come back. We finished in a dam, but it was quite steep, this rocky area. It was like full-on rocks all the way down. And that was towards the end of the day, so our arms were pretty pumped by the time we got down. And I had to put my head in the dam then.
Are they just dirt biking tracks? Or are they like tracks built by the locals that are using it for like rubber plantations or working out in those
Yeah, it's
areas?
hard to say because I remember Carl was saying about him and his friend Oscar, I think, sometimes they've made the tracks. Do you know what I mean? So they've been there so many times that they almost like, and Carl has a tendency, just probably like Shane and probably like me as well, but, where does this route go? Let's just have a little play around. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes we go, no, this doesn't go anywhere. Let's turn around and go back. So a lot of them just seem to be devised tracks, if you like, but there's no vehicles going down these tracks, as in like cars. They are pretty narrow.
Or like they'll have like people working in the rubber plantations that might be using them. Yeah,
there's some areas where people were on mopeds, on the dirt bits, but nothing too steep.
Yeah, and Phuket still, it's a big island, but I don't think you're going to get that lost out in the hills. Even here in Kamala, there's some interesting tracks as well. But walking wise, yeah, for sure. If you're going to walk out there, I've gotten stuck out there, and to come back, might be an issue. But for people motorbiking, it's gorgeous up there. And what's interesting about Phuket and dirt biking, it's a part of the island only you can see.
Yeah.
And no one else is going to experience that. And there's riverbeds out there. You're up at the top of the mountain. The whole like forestry, it completely changes. Like once you get higher and higher up, like the type of trees you're going to see up there, it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was. And then a lot of it, because there's another friend of ours called Peter, who's like an ex motocrosser, and it was amazing because I went to see him on Saturday with Shane, and he's like 66, but then there's quite a famous event called like the 6 days, and like a lot of the KTM motorbikes are designed like around 6 days. So like this year I've got a 6 days 350, and it's like the French colours. Whereas this guy Peter, who's 66 from Germany, he said, well, he's done it 9 times, and it's a 6-day event.
Where does it take place?
Well, all over. So
like Thailand?
No. So it's around the world. So like this year was like, it's like the French colours, and it's like Portugal colours. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like different countries each time. So then the colour of the country is then designed around the bike. But he said it's like just full on 6 days. And then, like you were saying to me, that it's like 300, I think one of those like a 300 kilometre in one day. So it's like, like 200 miles.
So how long you're driving for? What, 4 or 6 hours?
I know more. Yeah, a lot longer. Yeah, so it depends on how good you are and the terrain. So it might be taking you 7, 8.
Sorry,
8 hours.
you were saying you have done that, or you have?
No, he's done it.
I understand he's done it, but yourself, would you?
No, well,
is that on the roadmap?
If I was, because I'm 54 now, and I'm still fit and strong, but because I do a lot of medical stuff teaching wise. Part of me would say, yes, I'd like to try it. But part of me thinks, you know, maybe just be a little realistic, enjoy the days out mountain off-roading. But to do like something like the Erzberg Rodeo in Austria, where it's just like 1,500 riders start, the best riders around the world doing these like seriously steep, crazy mountain stuff. It's probably not really for me. I don't mind like a nice day with a nice lunch, nice tracks, yeah, and then maybe the next day rest a little bit. I just did Portugal as well. We went to Portugal for 12 days, so we did 7 days riding, and that was amazing around the mountains of Portugal.
How does that work at the end of the day? You're able to find, like, you have to camp, or you're finding a hotel?
No, we stayed in, this time, the first time we did it last year, so we did 7 days, but we had a base in Chaves in Portugal, so every day we did, say, 100 miles, yeah, and then, or 80 miles, and then it varied each day, but we come back to the same base. Whereas this time, we went from hotel to hotel, so we had to carry our stuff with us. So, and also the stuff of a bike, and any repairs we had to do them on the side of the track.
And then when you're going to these countries, you're just easily able to rent, or is it kind of...
We take our bikes with us.
You're taking them from...
From England.
How on the flight?
No, on a ferry. Yeah, so in England,
okay.
we had the ferry from like Portsmouth in UK to Bilbao or Santander in Spain. So it takes like 2 days to get there. And then we're in vans, so 2 vans. And then from there, we drive 500 kilometer, and then our bikes are with us, and all our stuff is with us. So we literally just leave the vehicle, and off we go.
So you're on the ferry for 2 days?
2 days. 1 day on the way back.
So you like motorbiking?
Yeah. Yeah, 12-day trip to do 7 days riding.
Yeah, my God.
Yeah.
I was trying to put that together. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And now, is this ferry, is it meant for that, or is it kind of like a cargo ferry?
Well, no, it's just like a normal standalone ferry. So, like, you know, they got all motorhomes. So, like, people from UK want to go, say, to Spain or France.
Ah, okay.
And then anybody want to, because it'll save you like a day of driving. So, you know, you pay the money for the ferry, and then you get off, and then you're already in Spain.
Wow.
And you haven't driven 24 hours to get there.
Do a lot of people living in the UK know about this? Or
Yes.
it's kind of, wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So they take the motorhome and then have a month in Spain, and rather than driving back to UK, they'll just go back on the ferry, because it'll save you, 4 days of driving.
You would be able to drive from Spain to the UK. I guess you're driving around and then taking, is it a tunnel back over?
Well, you can do. You can go on the tunnel from Calais, to Folkestone, or you just get the ferry from Calais to Dover.
And that drive, if you did it, would be 3 days, you're saying?
Well, it depends. If you did it continuously, it'll probably take you 16 to 20 hours, maybe. It depends where you're going.
Just to get your trip started as well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So most people take 2 or 3 days, and they stop on the way, like in France, in 3 places. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, let's jump forward, and this is kind of the meat of the podcast as well, right here. No, I'm joking. That's not yet. That's coming. You're building your house in Nyan. Can we talk about that in terms of that thought process? How did you end up deciding Phuket? Why did you decide Nyan? And work us through a little bit about the visa work and how are you going to make Phuket your home?
Yeah, I'm probably not guaranteed to live here full time yet, because I bought this apartment. It's like I stayed in a friend of mine who's ex-military, Clay. And so I stayed there in January, and I thought the workmanship on the build of a place called Vital was amazing. And I got the pool, well, I got a few pools, to be honest. And then I went into the reception, and they're obviously selling the new phase. And I said, well, I might be interested. They said it was not built until December next year. And I said, well, that's okay, because I'll just pay it in installments. And that seems to work quite well. So I'll probably come this time as a trial, probably like December, January, February. So I'll probably do 3 months. But then I'm also back in a month's time. So I might do most of September, probably a lot of July. So I'll probably come back then. And then Nanyang is very quiet, but it's quite a nice beach. It's a lovely place. But then I quite like this area down here. And I like Phuket because it's an island, but you can easily access the mainland by the bridge. It's not like if you're in Koh Samui, because you'd have to get a ferry to, I don't know, Koh Tai or Koh Phangan or something.
Or this bridge that's coming.
Oh, is it?
No.
Okay.
They say for, I think, the past 20 years.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you're talking about an 80K bridge, maybe. It's not happening.
Okay.
Not in my lifetime. Anyways.
And all the beaches in Phuket, because it's like so many on the East Coast and the West Coast, and I just like, the area in itself. I'll probably end up teaching in Bangkok and a few other places. My friend has asked me if I could teach in a university somewhere in the south of Thailand, so I'll probably go there. But it's an easy base, because if I teach in India, I can just, it's 3.5 hour flight, I think, direct. And then, things like Hong Kong, Dubai, so it's like 6 hours. So it's almost like a good base to be. Whether I live here full time, I'm not sure yet. I'll probably, because I enjoy my motorbiking in England and my friends are there. So, so it's debatable whether I'll just sell everything and leave everything to come here, or whether I'll just come here for 3 or 4, 6 months and then go back. So I'll probably do like half and half. I quite like skiing as well, so I won't mind like a ski resort. So I quite like the cold.
Oh yeah, I guess at least you're not too far to Japan from here. Yeah. Maybe 8 hours on a flight. I don't think
skiing in Japan.
Skiing in Japan. Okay. I think the flight from Phuket, you'd probably I doubt there's direct, but you'd fly to Hong Kong. Yeah. Hong Kong to let's say Tokyo is probably 5 hours. Okay. So you're looking at less than 8 hours flight. It's not too bad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because normally I ski in Europe.
Yeah. So there we go. Now I got to move into Japan as well.
But yeah, I've climbed Mount Fuji.
Oh really?
Yeah. So I went there many years ago. In fact, my son was like 5 months pregnant. My girlfriend at the time. So I thought, well, let's go and do Mount Fuji. It's an interesting mountain.
I've been to Tokyo. I saw Mount Fuji. I definitely did not climb it, but I heard it's not that difficult.
No, it's not. No. And then when I did it, I'm not sure. It must be over 20 years ago, 23 years ago. And but the way up is different to the way down. So it's like almost like one-way system coming down. So it's and it wasn't snow capped when I was there in July. So it's like a volcano on the top. And it wasn't difficult. I've done quite a few mountains, but
have you decided now, like when you're coming to Phuket, did you take any other locations into consideration? I think this is kind of for the listeners out there that are looking to retire, maybe in Southeast Asia. Did you consider Bali, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, or were you pretty much dead set on Phuket?
Well, I've probably been to Thailand the most. I have been to the Philippines. I've been to Cebu, and but it just seems a lot longer to get there, even though it's probably not in reality. I am going to try Palawan after I teach in Taiwan. So I'm going to go there diving in El Nido, I think it is.
El Nido, yeah.
El Nido. So I'm going to go dive in there and just see what's like, whether I would live there or not, because again, it's like 7,100 islands in that sort of Philippines. I think it's a bit more than that. Depends whether the tide's up or down, something like that. And so I'm not sure if I would live there. I probably like it as a place, but I think for me, Phuket is probably easier just to get.
Yeah, I've dove in Palawan. It's really off the beaten path.
Yeah,
because you're gonna have to like fly to Manila, and sometimes they don't even have. Well, they used to have like a 50-seater plane from Manila to El Nido. Yeah, and Puerto Princesa is their main airport. Yeah. So actually, the more expensive way, but the way most people could do it is you're going Manila to El Nido, but you're in a 50-seater or something like that.
Yeah. And
that flight round trip is, I think, $400 or $500 US.
Okay.
But most people will go Manila to the airport near Boracay. I forget the name of it, Iola or something. And then you fly from there to Puerto Princesa. Well, that's just your Philippine flights, plus your international. And then when you get to Puerto Princesa, it's a 9-hour drive to El Nido. Now, when I did it, 2015 or 14, they were building the road by hand. Oh. So we're lucky it wasn't raining, but if it was raining, you can't even get there because the road's mud.
Okay.
Now, El Nido's, it's nice, but to be honest, when I was there, all the locals are like hooked and cracked out on meth. Oh. So forget about that part.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, when you go out at night to the restaurants and the bars, it's seedy there.
Yeah.
It's a very strange scene. Besides your hotel and your diving is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. But you'll see when you get there and you land, it is off the beaten path, and it's like, yeah, you couldn't live there. There's maybe you could, but personally, there's not much to do out there. Yeah, there's a couple restaurants and this and that, but nothing.
Yeah, I went to Vietnam as well, so I had 2 weeks in Nha Trang, and that was okay. There wasn't many people like myself there. There's a lot of people coming obviously from China, a lot of Russian people, which is fine. But I didn't really see many British tourists there. So whereas like, in Phuket, there's lots of British people, lots of people from US, where you can have like,
yeah, you can feel a bit more
friendship.
At home.
Like in Nha Trang, it's like yesterday I had a few beers and I've met quite a lot of local people. Not local Thai, but
where was that?
In Nha Trang.
Oh, Nha Trang.
Yeah, okay. So it's like a nice little community there. A lot of German people and British, and then they all live there. a lot of Australians. So we just have natural,
Yeah, and it's more of a local community there. You're gonna have a lot of people that have probably been there like 20 years plus. It is. We're looking more like Northern Lion maybe to move again to get away. This area down here, it's getting a bit too busy now, and it's nice to be away so you're closer to the airport. So when you have to go, you're not stuck in this 40-minute to 1 hour traffic.
No, exactly. Because yesterday when I come back from Batong, the traffic, it was probably an hour plus just to get to Shane, and then 40 minutes to get back for me. So I was like, wow, it was busy. Whereas Nayang is hardly any.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And once you have the dirt bike up there, you can, from the Nyan Beach, you can rip across. The water is going to have to be a bit low tide, and then that's kind of a shortcut to Naithon. And it's the Marriott's right there. But the bike can go right across as long as the water's not too high. I've done it a few times on the motorbike. You get stuck and you got to rip it through, but I think you'll be okay up on the dirt bike. Yeah. There's some really Shane could tell you some interesting spots to dirt bike up in Khao Lak, and they go out there on the beach and they just drive for miles and then come back into the jungle.
Okay.
And it's only spots where you can get on the dirt bike, and it's supposed to be absolutely gorgeous because the Khao Lak beaches, once you get way out there, which is Phang Na area, so you're talking north of Baba Beach Club, Nha Thai. Once you get way up there, I mean, these are like 40-kilometer beaches you can just see for miles. And there's no like bays like we have down here. So you can just rip across that.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, for yourself, when you're moving here, do you have plans on what you're going to be doing for the visa, or will you just kind of be coming and going and exiting as you need to?
Well, a friend of mine, Michael, who's a lawyer, he said, when I'm in that process to apply, then let him know. But I know you can get like a retirement visa if you're over 50 for 1 year.
Yeah.
So my figure's a few $100 maybe, US dollars. So I probably will do that because I think they've just changed the rules from 45 days to 30, someone said to me a couple of days ago. So it just means every 30 days you probably have to leave, and then come back to get your passport signed again.
Or they have the elite visas now as well.
Okay.
I think they're about, I'm looking into them, I might decide in December. They have one that's like 800,000 baht for 20 years, and you just pay, and then they leave you alone forever.
All right. Okay.
And then it's done. So when you do obviously when you're doing the work visas that I'm doing, or you're doing a retirement visa, it's just more paperwork and headache. Yeah. They're just like, give us all this money, and we'll give you a 20-year, and we just leave you alone.
Okay. I'll probably do that.
There you go. That's my plan for maybe August, maybe doing this elite visa. I think they have an elite one at 500,000 for 5 years.
Yeah.
But for the extra 300 for 20, it kind of makes sense as well. And and you get all these extra amenities. Like every time you land at the airport in Bangkok and Phuket, they pick you up and drive you like kind of like first class. Okay. So they drive you can go wherever you want and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump ahead to the meat of the podcast. I don't know if we should we'll take a break. We're gonna take a look at my foot. I crashed this last time. Actually, to give a premise to the story, I had a friend on. He has a YouTube channel called Keys One, Adam Jones. We decided to drink a lot of beer on the podcast that day.
All right.
I think I must have had 6 beers, and then we decided to drive to the beach.
Okay.
And as I was driving, so this is at least 2 months ago. As I was driving to the beach, I was okay. I just went to pass a car on the motorbike. And as I passed the car, I went to accelerate and I hit the gas. But the specific spot on the back roads of Bangtao, if anyone lives here, it's right by where the old Orange Bar is. The road there, just at that spot, it's super just bumpy and destroyed. So it kind of went like straight, and then it has a dip, and then it goes back up. So as I accelerated, I hit the bump, went up, landed it clean, probably only going 30, but when I hit the nose, it just, slipped out.
Okay.
So I was cut up pretty bad, continued to drink for the rest of the night like an idiot. And the next morning, couldn't even walk. No. Had to go on Tim Newton's Today morning channel. I'd limp in there. Luckily, it was on the way to the hospital. And basically, this toe here, as you can see the bone coming up, I haven't been able to walk or extend this big toe. Is that dirt on the foot? Let's see. Yeah. I haven't been able to extend this big I love how we're zooming in on the toe. Extend on this big toe. And so therefore I can't run, and therefore I'm getting fat. So, I'm sad because I'm fat, and I'm fat because I'm sad type of thing. So let's cut and then come back, and we'll decide how to I guess we're going to diagnose my foot, and I guess that's good content for everyone.
Why not?
Okay, we're back, and we are going to inspect my foot and see if it's broken. Okay, here we go. You can kind of, because for anyone that's listening on audio, we'll try our best to describe what's going on. My foot is on a table, so you can come over to YouTube and watch that, and we're going to see if we need to cut the foot off or what we're going to be doing here.
Okay. Now, when you... a lot of people don't realize how important the big toe is. Medically, the big toe is called the hallux. So any muscles attaching to it will have like a word like flexor hallucis or extensor hallucis. And but when you walk in what we call the gait cycle, so I always teach my students that the big toe is one of the first places you would check. And then you would check the ankle, and then the knee, and then the hip, even before you get to the patient's, say, lower back or pelvic sort of area. And like the big toe, you know, if you're looking at, say, can I just have your other foot for a minute? Yeah.
It should be clean. I just had a...
Yeah. So if you're looking at, say, this one, you've got 0 degrees, and then ideally, you'd have at least 40 to 45 degrees of extension. You call it extension or what we call dorsiflexion. And you can see that his left foot will do that. Now, on a lot of women tend to have what we call like a deviation. Medically, it's called like a hallux valgus. And there's many reasons for that. You know, they used to say a lot of women wearing heels and footwear, etc. But a lot of time it can be genetic. If a mum has a deviation of a great toe, then maybe the daughter will have the same. And a lot of people will have surgery to try to fix that. And for some it works very well. But for men don't tend to have too much of a deviation here. But on his right foot, there is a swelling around, this is the joint like called the metatarsophalangeal, because you've got the metatarsals here onto the phalanx. And on men in a certain age bracket, if you wake up one morning and then the big toe is painful, but it's normally, you know, you get like the heat and the redness, then more than likely 75% of that first MTP joint is related to gout. And it's like a crystallization within that joint. And then that can be very, very painful. You can get gout in other places, but for 75% is normally affected in this area in you. And he did mention that maybe there's a relationship to that because he does like, you know, nice food and alcohol. But in his case, it's more likely trauma related. But when I'm trying to bring his big toe up, you can see there's not much dorsiflexion. But where he's had that initial contact, even though he had an X-ray at the time, sometimes an X-ray might not show.
Should I try to...
might not show like...
should I maybe sit like that? There, the foot, so you can see it on the camera for you?
Yeah.
Is that better? So it's not such a side view?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to lift of it, there's hardly any motion in here. And then more than likely, even though I had an X-ray that didn't confirm the presence of an X-ray, a fracture, sometimes you can just stress the bone, but it doesn't show up for about 2 to 4 weeks. And no doubt that joint in here, the bone in itself, is actually quite swollen. And it's been 2 months already. And he said he can't run. Because the reason why he can't run is because he can't extend that big toe. And you need about 45 degrees just to run normally. So by trying to mobilize, as long as it's not too painful, because it's hard to mobilize it yourself sometimes, because we'd almost want to passively try to mobilize it. Do you feel okay doing this?
Yeah, I know if there's a certain point, then it's a sharp pain, but it's not unbearable.
Yeah, but more than likely, this MTP, then on this lateral side, on this outside, there is a bump, and that does feel like a callus within the joint. Well, it's not directly within the joint, it's probably just the neck of that bone in here. So it wouldn't surprise me if it is a stress fracture directly on that, and because this extra bit of bone is just, it's like when you have a wire and you cut it and you solder, where that bit of solder is, there's a natural callus, a bump, and it forms within that area, and you've got a callus forming around it. But on a positive, over time, but this, because you've got what we call the osteoblasts, lay down new bone, and then osteoclasts like eat away, like a little Pac-Man. They just eat and eat and eat. But sometimes that can take like a year or two. I'm not saying it'll be like that for you, but it can be, like if you fractured your ankle, the ankle can still look swollen a year later. But it's just the remodeling itself in here. No doubt we can treat this and we can mobilize it, but the main movement here will be extension and flexion, and then also you have this called abduction and adduction along here, where we have this deviation coming across here. So, and I can also do a circumduction type of motion in there, you okay? But it's never going to be a quick fix in 1-2 minute sort of treatment. but just trying to passively, because the main movement we need is this one. Okay, so it's extension. So one technique I could do is like a muscle energy technique. If you just slowly push your thumb down, your big toe into my thumb. Okay. So you curl it down. Can you do that?
Yeah. Am I trying my hardest, or?
Yeah. Well, no, you by 20% effort.
Oh, at 20.
Yeah. So give or take.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's not painful.
No.
So the idea is that if you activate the muscle for 10 seconds, then that muscle will automatically relax. It's called it's called a post-isometric relaxation. And then just let yourself relax. And now if I can just try to mobilize it a bit more. If it's too painful, let me know. Because obviously this is the first time I've looked at this great toe. And you okay there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
And you can see that I'm extending it a bit more there.
It's okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to hold you for a few seconds. And let's just repeat that again. So you can just slowly push. Then you can almost do this yourself. So I'd have to teach it to you.
I'll get my girlfriend to do this. Or Hans, right?
Because every joint has synovial fluid. And synovial fluid is like oil in the engine. Okay, and obviously if you don't use it, you lose it. So by trying to simply encourage movements within, it assists in the secretion of a synovial fluid, which is trying to lubricate the joint. You okay there?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the
Oh, don't worry, I'll tell you.
Okay, so that's 0 degrees there. You can see that we've already improved him to there. Yeah? Okay. And let's do it one more time, so you push down. So this is a soft tissue technique. So you use the muscle to contract the muscle, to relax the muscle. Relax, take a breath. And then I can passively encourage further great toe extension here. So this would take a few little sessions just to try to mobilize. But if we can get you towards that 30, 40 degrees, it means you would be able to walk normally. The load would then be taken off your knee and your hip.
Should I be doing this myself every day?
You should be trying to do this. You could almost like put the foot into warm water, hot water, so you just get some heat into it. Okay, don't worry about ice. You don't really need ice. Ice is good for pain. If it's painful, you can use ice, but just to warm it up a little bit, and even just mobilize, even using like 7 under the foot where you just activating it, you scrunching the towel. Do you know what I mean? But the flexion's not really a problem. You don't need that movement to run and walk. You just simply need that movement. Okay, yeah. And you probably find this callus will settle down because it's been 2 months, so more than likely it's healed. But because of that extra bit of bone, it's restricting the motion here.
Will that eventually go away, that callus?
Yeah.
So I'll be able to put it, like I was saying, I have friends, hockey players with hockey skates.
Yeah.
Even for me now, putting on a shoe, it's very tight.
Yeah. And then, so the idea is just trying to get it mobile. So you're just trying to secrete fluid. It's never like set time, set numbers. It's just, you just do it for a few minutes. Yeah.
Is there anything you can take, like flaxseed oil supplements?
Well, I'm not sure about the research on that. You know, everything will have a benefit in some way. But I think for, because I am, like an osteopath, a physical therapist, so I'm doing physical therapy. So you'd almost want someone like me just to spend time mobilizing. Or your girlfriend, you can teach your girlfriend just to mobilize it. Okay, because it is a joint. And if a joint's not moving, it's like an engine. If you don't use the car for a month or two,
stiff.
It's going to start to seize up. Okay, and we are, the human body's designed to move. Think about you watch 10,000 steps a day, but because you can't extend, the body shifts to the second and the third toe, so you get more problems on the outside. Yeah. Then it shifts, it changes your biomechanics on the whole foot and the knee.
That's what I feel now, my knee.
And also we'd almost want to, because that movement there, you're quite good in dorsiflexion. You can see that. Okay, so you normally need about 10 degrees of ankle to lift up, and you move well from there. So that's not really a problem. You're a little tight in your calf because your knee's bending when I do that, but that's okay. Okay, so that's quite good as well. And you can also look at this joint in here. So you've got the cuneiform just in here, and then you've got something called the navicular just here. So there's many bones, like 26 or 28 if you include the little 2 sesamoid bones in here. So that joint in here, I can almost like just mobilize that joint. Okay, so I'm just doing what we call like an AP, so anterior, posterior, or PA gliding, when I'm just trying to mobilize that one. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't tend just to look at one area. So even though obviously the problems at this first MTP, you'd want to be mobilizing where the metatarsal meets it's called the medial cuneiform or first cuneiform in here.
Just watch your mic a bit so I can.
Yeah, which is part of the tarsal bones.
This clip's going viral on some weird porn foot fetish website.
Along here. Okay, because sometimes as you know, it's never going to be trauma to one area because the way the foot hit, you probably would have just stressed some of those tissues around here.
That's what I was saying. It hit on the top.
Yeah, around there. But, you know, it's just that natural motion would have upset some other issues around here. Okay, but there'll be lots of little things in here. I'll be trying to get these metatarsals moving in here.
For someone like yourself, because you're not here all the time, I mean, I can't just call you up. Hey, John, come on over. What can someone do when they still need to treat it and someone like yourself at this level is not around?
Well, it's probably easier to, if it's like an ankle, a foot, or a hand, you can almost like mobilize it yourself. So you probably don't need too many people involved if you know what it is you are trying to do. You know what I mean? But
now, would it be smart at this now? I know on injuries like back injuries, you shouldn't be going to see a massage therapist because you don't want to aggravate it. Is that correct?
well, probably not.
But for this, should I be doing foot massages? Would that help, or would it be
foot massages would be good?
Okay.
Because it's hands-on treatment. Any type of treatment will be beneficial because they'll be mobilizing, and then because they're doing all this type of movements, it's generating heat, stimulative of the nerve endings. Yeah, but then you'd almost want to get them trying to just mobilize without irritating it.
Do you think that even like let's say a sports massage therapist, and there are great facilities, actually there's one up at, I'm not going to give that, actually I'm not giving that info away because they get busy. They're very good, I'll tell you after. But they are a sports massage therapist, they're Thai. If I kind of explain to them, they would understand enough what I kind of need done? Yeah. Okay. Boom.
Yeah, you okay with this? This is just a little...
Yeah, it's okay now. I even once I feel the pain, at this point it's sharp, but it's not unbearable. But the first month was like, I was walking on the right side of the outer side of my foot.
Yeah, well, I can feel it gliding.
Hans, you don't need me on the camera. Get out.
So I'm gliding this way, and that works quite well because what sometimes would happen is if you're not using it, you'd have to be quite careful in some ways because this could become what we call a hallux rigidus. So if and sometimes where you have too much trauma, like especially football contacting, then you have like a little lip of a bone, so you can't physically lift it. So that's what I mean. You almost want to be like, now is almost a good time. A month ago would have been probably better to have started to mobilize it. But even so, you know, I can still feel movement that way, which is a good thing. I can feel movement this way.
Can you feel it since we started? It's becoming more fluid. Before that I would feel a sharp pain. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So we are extending. How much I can improve in one session is debatable, but at least, it's all about small increments. You know, a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, and you'll probably find that over the next week or two, you know, you might be able to lunge. You might be able to initiate that run, because obviously running is a good exercise to do to control weight. And if you can't run, then what do? You can swim, but it's probably not quite the same. You know what I mean? So I quite like running as well. So
yeah, I find running, if I get too fat from beers on the weekend, it sheds it off pretty quick. For me, it's I need to run, like, and I'll do wind sprints. I got a place right there. Not so much running for 5K. Yeah. But I'll do a light run, 30 minutes, and I'll just do wind sprints till I can't breathe anymore. Yeah. High intensity, and that's the best way to shed this beer belly off. But right now,
just a little traction. You just to open the joint. It just stretches the ligaments on it. You okay with that?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. There's not really too many manipulative techniques I would do this. There's a few in the ankle I do, but your ankle moves okay. So.
But in general, I could just tell my girlfriend, hey, just twirl it around a bit.
You know, she could almost like watch me on this podcast.
There we go. Clip this, put it on the TV every night. I get to see John every night and right after dinner. Okay. So, that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's okay.
We will take a quick break. We got to finish the happy ending part. So we'll be right back. One sec. Gorgeous. And the altitude's quite high as well. So you have to get used to that. The first day the hotels they're good. They put you in. I mean, you're not going to, there's no Marriott there. Here, just, I'll push that in. That's okay. But they measure the success of the country in something called gross domestic happiness.
All right.
Yeah, they're not. They have a king there. It's very like chilled, laid back. The food you'll get bored of by the end, so don't go for 20 days. I mean, unless you can handle it. But it's a lot of like meat, potato, yak meat, potato. You know, just rotate the. You lost me there. The food's pretty basic. I thought the yak meat is phenomenal. Like a yak meat burger, it kind of tastes like roast beef. It's
Okay.
They do it in a stew, so it's falling apart in your mouth.
Yeah.
But when you drive around, everywhere on the side of the road is like the freshest apples and the most delicious apples you'll ever eat in your life. They're just selling apples off the road from the tree. So it's a really cool place. It's all Buddhist and very chill, but definitely a place to check out. Anything else around here? East Timor is just like if you're in Bali or Indonesia, okay, go to East Timor, but don't just go to East Timor.
Yeah, I've done Bali.
Yeah, Bali is.
Yeah.
East Timor is East Timor is it's so expensive, like because it's meant for like the UN, so it's all write-offs, company expenses. So like the shittiest hotels like $200, $300 a night. If you go for 3 or 4 days, you're gonna spend at least almost $2,000. All the tours that they run there, we'll take you here for, the day. It's like $800. The guys don't care. They're just like, well, we're not going to go because they know that the UN's showing up and that someone's going to pay $800 and write it off. So there's a lot of that. The diving there is phenomenal.
Okay.
East Timor, we'll come back in a second. Fix that. The diving in East Timor, it's drift diving. So you're on the island of East Timor, and then they take you to another island that's part of East Timor, and you just drift dive on this cliff, and there's eco-friendly hotels. Everything there is off the beaten path. But 2-3 nights max is enough, unless you really want to get adventurous, and they'll take you to a part on the island, but it takes like 2 days or something to get there on like a jeepney through the jungle, and then you'll end up in like a fishing village with like nobody there. That's we didn't have time for that. So anyways, that's some of the cooler stuff around here. We ready? Okay. We're back. I hope you enjoyed that foot massage. Before we wrap it up, we're probably going to go for another 10-15 minutes. We're probably getting close to an hour without all the cuts. Let's talk about the book you brought in, the Vital Glutes, and hold that up there. You brought in this wonderful book here, the Vital Glutes, and primarily you're talking about putting the gluteus back in your maximus.
Over Maximus back into gluteus.
I reversed that there.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about this book and what could people expect getting out of it?
Yeah, well, that's probably one of my most popular books because I think if you look at YouTube or Google, I think people seem to be doing a lot of Googling, if you like, on how to activate the glute muscles and stuff like that. So that was the second book I wrote. So I wrote an article and I called it, put in Maximus back into gluteus, and it went down very well. And then my publisher said, well, because it went down very well, could you write a whole book on it? And I went, well, I'm not sure if I could write 60, 80,000 words just on the gluteus maximus. Because I always say to my students, I said, I'm teaching a course on a knee. I said, how many words could you write just on the knee? And most people will go, well, I can probably write 2 or 3 pages if I write big, if you know what I mean. So when I started it, I thought, is it a book? And then slowly I started adding things in, like how the glutes relate to the ankle. And there's lots of studies about, like if you've gone over on your ankle, like an inversion sprain, then naturally there's a particular ligament. It's called the anterior talofibular ligament, but it gets damaged. But there's a big link to the glute medius in particular. So whenever I teach looking at ankles and feet, then you should include activation of the glute muscles, because obviously when you stand on one leg, and most of the time when you're in a gait cycle, you're either on your left leg or your right leg. So when you say, I'm doing 10,000 steps a day, it's 10,000 steps on one leg. Yeah, left leg or right leg. So naturally, the glute medius, which is the smaller muscle, compared to the glute maximus, which is the bigger muscle. So the gluteus maximus work in harmony in some ways with the medius, which is the smaller one, and they stabilize the hip, which then translates to stabilizing the knee, which then naturally translates to stabilizing the ankle and the foot. So if you've got a strong glute group of muscles, not just A or B, glute med, or don't worry so much about the minimus because it's relevant, but not for this conversation. So if you've got a strong glutes, then I always say that you've got a strong knee. And if you've got a strong glute, you've got a strong stability to the ankle and foot. And whenever people have like instability in the ankle and foot, yes, it could be continual damage to the ligaments, which is fair enough. But you can also have instability if the glutes are not working as well as they should. And then, so it's not only does it translate from the glute to the knee to the ankle and foot, but also it works in the other direction. So when I always say to my students, what's the function of the glute medius? And they go, well, it takes the leg to the side. It's an abductor. And I said, yes, but it's not really that relevant because you don't walk around lifting your leg to the sides. You might do it in a class, in an exercise class, but it's still almost irrelevant because it's not really functional. And the idea of a glute is that the glute medius in particular will maintain pelvic positioning for when you are walking. So if the glute on, say, one side is slightly weakened for some reason, it could be many reasons why it's weak. And that's what the book is about. It's not so much about what exercise you would do to strengthen. It's about why is it weak in the first place. Because there's quite a famous guy in the US called Brett Contreras, who's got a PhD, and he's known as the glutes guy, which is fair enough. And but a lot of his stuff is biased about more exercise-based, which is great. Whereas mine's not really, like the last chapter's exercise. Whereas the first, 11 chapters is about why might the glutes be weak in the first place and what you can do about it. Because if you've got a lower back problem with a nerve, like the superior gluteal nerve, which is L4-5, mainly L5, will innervate the glute medius. So if you've got a problem with, say, L5 nerve root, then the glute med ain't going to work because you've got a disc pathology. So I've also linked the glutes to the pelvis and the lower back as well. So, and they are vital, they are the key. And if a glute is weak, then the pelvis will dip. Medically it's called a Trendelenburg. So if the glute is weak on the right, when you step on the right leg, the pelvis will dip to the left. But then the body compensates, and then you get what we call a compensatory Trendelenburg. So we end up leaning into the side of weakness. Either way, when you walk, you'll have like a strange gait pattern. I mean, a bit like when you've damaged your foot, you'll walk differently. When you damage the knee, you'll walk differently. If you've got a problem with arthritis in the hip, you'll walk differently. And because the hip relates to the glutes, any problem within the hip, the glutes, for some reason, will say, I'm not going to work so well. So then, whenever you're looking at activation of the glute and what they do, you should then look at the hip. So then, as part of a book, the hip is to include. So suddenly now, I can write a bit more about the hip joint, and I can write about the back and its glute, and I can write about the knee. Do you know what I mean? So that's like another chapter. So it's not just about the glutes, it's how the glutes affect the hip, or in reverse, how the hip affects the glutes. Okay, is it A or B or B or A? And it just seems to work very well. And then that then relates to a course. So then if you do the course on glutes, you get the book, which students love because they say, well, you're not going to charge me extra for the book. I go, no. You've paid enough money for the course. Why would I want to charge you more money for the course notes? And students love the course book because it goes on a bookshelf. Whereas if I give them a PDF of some information, it drifts somewhere and they'll never find it again. Whereas a book will be on your shelf. Do you know what I mean? And I'm open, and many places I go to, they send me pictures. John, you're almost taking up the whole shelf now with your 8 books I've got. And obviously I'm doing the spinal book, which is I'm a bit slower now. And I've just designed a spinal course online. So that'll be ready to launch next month. So that's like spinal mobilizer. But you'd almost want to be a therapist who already manipulates to do it because it consolidates rather than just doing the online to learn how to do it. And because I find it hard to learn, you need me teaching you how to do it.
When these people that are using this book, it's primarily therapists. I mean, it's not the average retailer that's just picking it up.
A lot of people will buy this one because it's probably one of my easier books to read. There's not that many pages. It's probably 200. And it's about 60,000 words, whereas my shoulder is quite full on. That could have been 3 books in reality, rather than just one solid book. So I think a lot of the Joe public, where they're interested in that word, and it's not much money. It's probably $15 to buy, So as a punt, if you like, you're not spending $50.
Yeah.
And then people read it, go, "Oh, I quite like that." And then suddenly, my goal is to walk past like a swimming pool where someone's reading my book.
Maybe at a university.
Yeah, well,
we're
like,
at a university swimming pool.
Yeah, well, lots of people take it on holidays. Like they by the beach and they said, "Oh, John, I'm reading you a book. I'm studying." And I'd love to walk past that person on that beach saying, "Oh, are you enjoying the book?" You know what I mean?
And with the glutes and the ass, it kind of connects to the beach as well.
Yes.
What is there a go-to, let's say, a glute exercise people could do once a week, or incorporate into their workout regimen for more maintenance purposes to avoid these injuries?
Well, Brett Contreras would say like the hip thrust exercise is probably one of the best, and he's got a machine that would do
hip
that.
Thrust is
like
that
a
kind
hip
of like
thrust.
where you put your back on and you have the barbell and you're doing that?
Well, that would be one way of doing that particular exercise. But before you almost sometimes it's not so much about the exercise you do, it's trying to work it out. Because any exercise where it will activate the gluteus maximus will be a positive thing to do because it's functional. So like when you walk upstairs, as you go to step, there's like a synergistic activation between the quadricep and the hamstring and the gluteus maximus. So it's not just like one, it's like a triangle. And you cannot work one really without working the other two. Because if you just do purely like a hip thrust, you're trying to activate the glute max in its one range motion. But it's not really designed for that because it's designed in function. So when you bend in, pick things up, when you stand in, when you're walking upstairs, when you lift the leg to push, the glute max works. It's called the paradox of Lombard. So it's like three muscles contracting together to allow that motion. So any movement that replicates that functional plane is worth doing. Whereas if you just do a bicep curl, it's not really functional. If you do a push-up, it is. Because it activates, the wrist and the elbow and the shoulder. It's called like a closed chain exercise. So whatever you do for the glute, you have to try to relate it to the function that it's designed to do. Yeah. So if you're just doing like a hamstring, people go, "Well, I do leg curls." I said, "But it's not functional." When do you ever walk around doing that exercise? Or I do leg extension. I said, "It's not functional." If you want to activate a little bit of the vastus medialis muscle, because it's weakened because you've got patellofemoral pain syndrome, then that potentially could be okay as long as it doesn't cause you pain when you do it. But you don't want to be focusing on it because it's not designed for that. So one of the exercises I suggest people do is like use like a core ball, place the core ball against, I've got the pictures in there if you wanted to show the pictures.
Yeah. I think it's better you show it and hold it so people, because this will all be on, the camera will be on you.
Yeah, so something like this exercise in here. So I suggest people spend a little bit of money on a core ball, and then you literally place the lower back into the core on the ball, and then because you use the ball to then glide up and down the wall
with the weights.
Yeah, you don't need any weight. There's weights on this one, but you just progress to that. Yeah, and then because it's all about the alignment of the knee. Because many people, if I said like do a squat to someone, then most people would have a tendency where the knees drift forward. And if they did say 20 repetitions 3 times, the next day they might say, "Well, I feel it in my quads." I go, "But it's not a quad exercise. It's because of the technique you are applying is almost incorrect. It's okay, but it can irritate the knee."
This is isolating it.
This is trying to, but it's not just isolating the glute, but you want to try to focus a little bit more on the glute because you are extending from the hip.
And is that because you're trying to push more through the heel than the toe?
No, you can keep a foot relatively flat. A lot of people will come up, a lot of people will, when they do a squat, will put like a small little piece of wood, if you like, under the heel to change the angulation of it. But no one really needs to do that. You're almost making it more complex than what it's designed to, because again, it's not functional. Do you know what I mean? So you'd almost want to be quite natural doing it. But what I do say is like place the fingertips onto the bum muscle, if you like, and then on the way up, try to focus on the squeezing of the bum as you extend. And if you can work on that, and that'll be one of the best things for, if you've got lower back pain, I say maybe do that for the glute. If you've got knee pain, maybe do that as well. Remember, I wrote the book not about these pages of the exercises. I wrote the book to try to understand, because many of my patients will say, "John, I've been doing glute exercises every day, but it never seems to work. So, they've been watching all the YouTube videos, bought my book, and they try to do the exercise, but it's not particularly working. So you almost have to work out if it's a nerve problem, it's not going to work. Okay, because the wire to the muscle has been cut because it's compressed by the disc, let's say, in layman's terms. And then the dimmer switch is on dim, so the power to the light, the power to the glute from the wire, because it's electric, there's no feed to it, so the glutes will never work. So you can do the exercise all day, every day, and it makes no difference because the problem's with the disc, and you've got nerve root pathology. But also, if you've got pathology in the hip, like an arthritis or something called a labral tear, then the muscle of the hip flexor, called the psoas, decides it's like a protector. So it restricts movement. But because the hip flexor is opposite to the glute, it causes it to become inhibited. So now the glute's not really working because the opposite muscle is too strong because it's protecting the hip. So, so it's not always about what are the best exercises to do. For me, it's like trying to work out why it's not working in the first place, because you'll spend 30 minutes every day doing the exercise, but it's never going to work because you've got arthritis in the hip joint.
Is there any danger on talking about if you're doing squats with a weight, say we're in the squat rack, depending on the angle of my foot, should we be a little bit angled out? Also, the gap of my leg, should I be at shoulder width? And is there any, and this is kind of three parts of the concept of the squat, the foot angle, also the knee's going to follow the foot alignment. The depth of your squat, should you be passing 90 degrees on the knee? Is there trouble for the knees? And also the width of your leg, should it be shoulder width? Can you talk a little bit about maybe the dangers or what could occur, or what you should be doing, or what you recommend for that to avoid any dangers, or what is best? Sorry, it's a bit long-winded on that one.
Yeah. Well, anatomically, the hip depends on your anatomy in some ways, because some people can squat fully and have no problem. Some people have to turn their legs out to squat fully. Some people almost like would deviate and change their legs in. Not so much on that one. But so anatomically, the hip will design whether you can squat correctly or not. But then I always say you have to work with what you got. Because if you start changing things, like when you're saying the foot, are you changing the foot or are you changing the hip? Because if the knee is bent and you're doing that, then that is obviously my tibia is externally rotating. But if my leg is straight, now it's my hip that's externally rotating. Do you know what I mean? Okay. So, but I always say that when you bend in, try if you can to get the kneecap to go towards your second toe. Okay. But the foot should be in what we call subtalar joint neutral. So the foot should be neutral. I almost say walk on the spot and just stop. And that would be your anatomical position. If you start to take the legs wider or altering things, it's almost unnatural. Okay. Because when you bend to pick something up, you don't automatically think, what is my knee doing? What's my hip doing? What's this doing? So it almost now has to be quite natural. Glutes work better after 45 degrees. Okay, so whenever you are wanting to work the more of the gluteus maximus, then the angle of the knee, that's 90 degrees. So when you were trying, that's obviously for the knee, not the hip, but the glute is better. So as long as you're going towards 45 onwards, you don't really have to pass 90, because if there's a potential issue within the knee, then like the menisci, or if your technique is not so good, because when people load the bar and then they load the glute, the knees can very quickly change position. So the knees have a tendency to drift inwards. You get this called a medial knee drift, and then it loads the ligament on the inside called the medial collateral ligament in here. So, and a lot of people go to, it's like a lot of people like outride themselves because they buy too big an engine on a motorbike. Like a 250 is suffice for most people. But a lot of people buy a 350 or 450 or 500, and they, and it's the first bike. And it's the same with squatting. They say, well, I'll have a go at 100 kilogram squat. It's like, don't be ridiculous, okay? Because your knee and your back, the technique, your core is not going to handle that. So I always say, but you said, you go lighter in the weight, but you might do a bit more repetition. So that extra weight is not going to load the disc, because that load on your spine is not the best. And sometimes to do that exercise, what I show on a ball, where you load it by just holding dumbbells. Then you can do like variations as you're doing it. So, but it's governed by the hip is the position whether you can squat fully or not, and also the full flexion of the knee. But for me, for certain sports, yes, you have to. But for the majority of people in gymnasiums and for most sporting events, to go towards 90 would suffice, even less than 90. Okay, so further than that, sometimes it will you deviate. Okay, the foot will pronate a bit more, the knees will drift in a bit more. The knee might have a tendency to turn out, to turn in, depending anatomically if the hip is allowed to do that. But medically, it's called like a retroversion. So the hips are anatomically facing outwards. Then you naturally want to have the hips externally rotated to squat deeper. Whereas if you turn the legs in and you got this hip I'm mentioning, you would struggle to do a squat towards 90.
And should most bodybuilders, or not just going in and doing your squats, should we be wearing weight belts? Should we be wrapping our knees? Or is that just depends on who you are, like in terms of if you're having pain or whatnot?
Yeah, it depends on what your goal is, if you know what I mean. So if your goal is to squat heavy and compete, like in Olympic lifting and things like that, then I probably would suggest that they would wear a belt just to give them some inner core stability. And a lot of them will wrap their knees. But I think for 95% of the population, you probably wouldn't really need to start adding in these extra, because it's almost changing the biomechanic a little bit, because you just, you're applying this to the knee. It's, if you feel benefit from it and you've always done it, then why not? Okay, but I wouldn't be teaching in my clinics that, you start wrapping your knees and do that. I always say that you'd go lighter with the weight, but you do a bit more repetition. So it's more endurance-based rather than, say, potentially strength-based, depending. Like 15 to 20 repetitions rather than, say, 4 to 6 or 4 to 8. Yeah, depending. Because as soon as you start loading the bar, that spinal position has to be so important. And if you don't keep it in relative neutral, if you're in flexion or extension, you're going to be loading facet or loading disc. Okay, and it normally changes by an extra 10 kgs either side. It'll just tip you over balance, and then suddenly that position, the gravitational position, you're going to tilt forward. And if I got a 5 kg weight there, it's only 5 kg. But if I do that, it increases almost 10 times to that L5 disc. Okay, so it's almost like 50. So if you're doing, say, forward raises, 5 kg, doesn't look like much, but it's 10 times to that L5. And if you're in a little bit of flexion, you load in your disc. Okay, and discs are not designed to be, they are in some ways because they allow motion, but they don't like it. Okay, so the facet joints are the stability blocks, if you like, within your spine, that need to be loaded, like in the neck. Okay, so you don't want to be in flexion in the neck because it's constant pressure to the disc. You'd almost want to be in neutral where the facets are taking the load.
And will this all then be carrying over to your book about spinal?
Yes, yeah.
And you said you're still in the middle of writing this book. Yeah. Can you, for the diehard John Gibbons fans out there just waiting for the book to come out, do you have any idea of when maybe this could be ready?
Probably towards the end of this year.
Okay. And published, like on people will be able to purchase by then?
Yeah, probably end of the year, probably early January, I would say. Because the thing is, like in publishing, because I'm linked to Lotus Publishing, which is a UK company, they have a sister company called North Atlantic, which is based in California, Berkeley area. And so I'm almost like in a queue. So I can't just suddenly say, there's my book and it's done. The editor will have it for 6 to 8 weeks. Then obviously I've got like a designer, medical artist. So if I send her a picture, then she will design the picture around it. But I might have 30, 40 of them. But then she might be doing it for another book. So I have to wait for her. I have to wait for the editor. I have to wait for the designer. So that's why sometimes it takes like 2 years. It was funny because last time I was here, I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I met a guy called Kurt. And he was an author. And like in his 70s, he was diving and I was diving. I said, oh, I'm an author as well. And he said, well, I've written like 31 books, like all self-help and very, very popular on Amazon. And I'm saying to him, I said, how long does it take you to write the book? And he says, 2 months. Sometimes I do it quicker, but his has no pictures. So it's all just content. And he can sit there for hours just writing and typing and then it'll be printed quite quickly. Whereas for me, because I've got so many photographers and 1,000 pictures have to have arrows, and all edited. And then I've got to be writing figure 1 to 7, wherever 4. And then it takes maybe 4 weeks just for the front cover, because I always think a cover of a book sells. If it's a nice cover. So normally it takes about 2 years to 2.5 years.
What have you, with the recent, the hype between ChatGPT, are authors like yourself able to lean into this technology to help write books?
That was only mentioned to me recently, and so I'm not really come across it too much. But someone did say that if you mention what you do on this artificial intelligence sort of site, but it comes up. I think it was Shane actually ever mentioned it, but it'll give you a whole profile, but you almost couldn't write it yourself. It's just done it, but it's done it in seconds.
Well,
that's what you mean?
Yeah. So you haven't seen ChatGPT yet, have you?
I think I've linked to it, but it was a while ago when I linked to it.
After the podcast, I'll show you quick. I'm going to show you something crazy. Because you have 8 books, the algorithm in Google is going to pick up the name of your author, so they'll know your writing style. I bet you I can write your whole book in, let's say, we'll do it after. I'll show you in 5 minutes. You'll see what it does.
Okay.
It's crazy. I'll go, write me a book by John Gibbons, and I'll write a couple of your books so it knows where to pull it. And give me a summary on the background of his new book, whatever that title we want to give it, something to do with spinal. You give me that, I'll show you. It's the cool thing about it is it won't do it perfect, but it will unlock creative juices for yourself, because it will be it will know how you think deep in your subconscious. It is mental. I don't know how it works. I'll show you after.
Okay.
And you're able to only maybe do this with authors that have the content out there, because the AI is going to go scrape all your content and it's going to write the book using your vocab, your writing style in seconds.
Wow.
It's scary stuff. We'll take a look at it after.
Okay.
Right when we finish. So just before we wrap this up, because it's been about an hour now, we've hit the nail on the head. You all got to see the star of the show. Well, I'm going to kick this camera back to you. If you can kind of let everyone know again where they can find you on YouTube, Instagram, any upcoming seminars and some teachings you have in India, or anything else where people just could in general reach out to you. That's your camera right there on the right, and just let everyone know how to find you.
Yeah, so if you look at my YouTube channel, so that's known as, just simply type in John Gibbons Osteopath, so you can find me on there. My Instagram account is bodymaster.method, and the same for Facebook, so you can find me there. My next teaching is in Delhi in June, and then I'm definitely in Taiwan for about 10 days in August, and then where am I then?
Hong Kong, Taiwan.
Yeah, Hong Kong, but that's not confirmed yet. But definitely Taiwan, and then I'm going to be Montreal, I think, in maybe March next year. So it'll be my first time in Canada. So yeah, I'm also in Dubai and Saudi in September, but no confirmed dates. So I'll be there.
Yeah, so you'll be able to. He's somewhere in the world, and he's going to be close to you guys at some point.
Yeah, then I'll probably, when I speak to my friend near Bangkok, I'll have to arrange, because I'm coming back so often. It would make a lot of sense just to do some teachings.
Can people see your how let's say a music star like Beyonce is going on world tour? Do you have that location on your website, like John's world tour? Here are my dates. Here, come find me.
No, but I think I should.
Right. I mean, it's pretty much the same concept. These stars go on world tour, and at least you can get an idea of when they're coming to your location.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Yeah, maybe I should, because my website is johngibbonsbodymaster.co.uk, and so yeah, maybe I would. Yeah, especially because in England, I'm doing less teaching, so my plan is to do October, November, but not for the 2 months, just probably 10 days within those 2 months. And then the same for March and April. Then the rest of the time I'll probably be writing somewhere, teaching somewhere around the world, or biking. Let's rephrase.
Well,
that.
if you can make that on the web, just make the design look like a world tour of a real artist. And then if we can get the shirt with the dates on the back, just get the whole thing going. I would buy that merch.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that wraps up another episode. I'm sure John will be back because he's moving here. So any questions for him in the comments? Obviously, we couldn't cover everything, but his book will be coming out by the end of the year. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in Thailand for life, so I'm sure he'll be back. That wraps up another episode. As you can see, the lion's mane's wearing off, so we're almost done. Okay, thanks a lot, John.
Thank you.